All right, you're live.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to this special meeting of the Police Policy Committee of the Community Police Commission. It is 6:02 p.m. on May 29th, 2024. We're calling this meeting to order. Roll call. Chandra Benito.
Present.
Kyle Early.
Present.
And Pete Van Leer present. Alana Garrett Ferguson is on leave. All right, agenda review. This is essentially the same agenda as we began our last meeting with. Are there any comments or questions about it? Okay, and there is no public comment today. So let's just jump right in. The first piece we have is the training committee. This is listing travel and training requests. I think we had started to talk about that, and the idea was that this is going to be discussed in committee, right? When's your next committee meeting?
The 12th.
12th.
But I have an update.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so our next training committee meeting is on Wednesday, June 12th, and I did meet with Commander Magooth and Lieutenant Smith on Tuesday, and we talked through kind of what some of our concerns were about trainings that might contradict CDP policy, and also trainings that could potentially be problematic, like and would need to lead to something like the DN that was sent out suspending people from being able to attend street cop training. So the process that we brainstormed was that officers would fill out what's the system called? Blue Note?
Blue team.
Blue Team. So they fill out a form in Blue Team requesting the training. That's all lined out in the GPO. And then what we talked about doing is that then that form is routed to the training division. And then the training division does a search of the organization that they're requesting to go to the training of. So that they would look that up. So they would, do a search and has there been any, bad press about it? Have there been any stories coming out? Anything that they see that might be problematic? Then if they find something problematic that they think, okay, no, we don't think officers should be going to this training, then that training request would be denied. And also then they would look at doing a DN similar to the DN that went out at street cop. Then after each training, when the officers are, essentially having their travel paid for and are attending, they would fill out a form afterwards that just says, how was it? What were the main takeaways that you had? Would you recommend other officers go to this training? And was there anything that was contradictory to the to CDP policy or training? And then that would also be a way for them to collect information of if officers come back and they say this was a bad training, or they said this that's contrary to what we're saying, that they might then at that point say, we're not going to have officers go to this training. Then every year, the CBC Training Committee will do an audit of the training requests and the kind of searches that they did, and make sure that they were following the process that we laid out. So that'll be kind of like a quality assurance check to make sure that CDP is doing that. And then the other thing that will happen that we want to put in some language in the GPO that specifically says that officers must ignore guidance that contradicts the CDP policy, and that if they sign up for a training, that in the Blue Team form, that they will have to sign an attestment to that as well, that they realize that they are responsible for making sure that they adhere to CDP policy, even if something is presented that is different. So Commander Magooth is drafting what we talked about, and then he will be sending that draft language to us for the training committee prior to the meeting on the 12th. And then our hope is that then we will have the updated revised GPO for consideration of this committee on our meeting on Wednesday, June 19th.
Just a quick question. You said that there'll be an annual audit, right? Done of the trainings. Is that also to include who went to those trainings and what trainings they might have had throughout the year?
So that is a separate thing that we need to figure out for the training committee. So in this particular instance, we're just talking about auditing to make sure that this review process happened. But there is a larger question that needs to be asked about what other training audits do we want to do. So, I mean, I think that it's kind of a separate question, but I agree that that's something that the training committee needs to look at. Are there any other ongoing audits that need to be done? That definitely falls under our jurisdiction.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? So, but that last piece would not be part of this particular GPO. It's more, yeah. Okay. And is that I can't remember, is that the only GPO you're looking at in that committee right now?
Yeah, and we're not going to put, we talked a little bit about putting in the audit into the GPO, but we didn't think that it made sense to put what CBC is required to do into the GPO because it's not our policies and procedures, that's their policies and procedures.
Will it say
I don't
that-
know of any other GPOs that we are specifically mentioned in.
We've been talking about that recently, and it's sort of like in terms of, I think the ShotSpotter GPO, for
Right.
example, it sort of said they will send, we added ourselves to the list of where the information will be sent.
Right.
So you could potentially in that GPO say, not say what the audit would be, but that figure out a way to make sure that, I don't know if it makes sense, but it might be something to consider, like should it be mentioned that this information or whatever will be sent.
So I think the
to
difference with that, in the ShotSpotter GPO, we wanted that to be sent to us in real time.
It's data. Yeah.
And instead of like, to me, this is more of like an annual
Right.
data request. And
Okay.
so, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know, because I guess my concern is then if we change, for example, that we want to do an audit every 6 months, then the GPO now contradicts what we're saying we're going to do. Then when we want to change our internal process, we're having to change the CDP's GPOs,
Mhm.
which I'm not sure makes sense. I mean, I'm not totally opposed to the idea, but that was just my thought.
Suggestion might be then if the GPO is strictly for the police and their policy, right? Maybe on our end, we put in writing some type of policy of how we do our internal audit alongside of that. Doesn't have to necessarily go in the GPO, but it can go alongside.
Well, one thing we could do is we could add it to the 1.4.5 that talks about committees, and we could specifically put it under the duties of the training committee. And we have that meeting next Wednesday, so that would be an easy add.
All right, great. Any other questions around training committee and work?
I guess my basic thought is one thing we could put in the GPO is that we say that instead of saying that we will do an audit every year, we would say that the CDP is required to give us these records once a year. But my feeling about that is that the charter already says that they have to give us records. So then it's like, if we start putting that in this GPO, then do we do that in every GPO that we would be reviewing potential records connected to?
Right.
But I think that because it's their GPO, it should be about what they're doing. So if we want to kind of include the audit in it, we could just say that CDP will participate or will cooperate with an annual audit or an audit at whatever frequency the CBC determines, something like that.
It's something for you all to discuss in the training committee, and yeah, I think it could go either way. I think you're right that they're required to give those records. It's not like the ShotSpotter thing where there's real time wanting to get that stuff, the data right away, the information right away. It's more of a, so I think you could go either way with that. All right. Next on the agenda is the Police Evaluations and Hiring Committee with 2 items: the performance evaluation management forms and duties of command and superior officers. I don't think we have anybody from that committee here today, do we? Jason, are you aware of
I
any?
thought I was on
Are you on the committee?
No, I haven't been.
Oh,
Yeah.
on the, for the discipline.
Is there an
stuff?
update on that, Jason, Mr. Goodrich? For those two?
For the ones that were in accountability?
No, police evaluations and hiring committee. Performance evaluation, yeah, I guess so, those were in
Well, police
accountability.
evaluations and hiring committee, the performance evaluation manuals and forms,
Yeah,
the discussion was to send those to the committee that we formed that's called promotions and evaluations. So it would make sense to go over to that group.
this is the-
Commissioner Rodriguez is the only one who asked for copies of those to review. So they haven't been distributed to anyone but that for the performance evaluation manuals and forms. There was never a committee assigned to handle in accountability those things, so they would be there. But they have not met to talk about those because their first priority is the 3 vacant commander positions that have been placed in their purview. So I would suggest that Chair Van Leer, you get with chair of that committee, which is Commissioner Rodriguez, and come up with a plan for that and see what needs to be done. Same with duties of command and superior officers. It's the right committee to be in there, but they don't have a plan to move forward with that yet. I think they're gonna have a meeting next week, so we could check in with them then.
Okay. Who else is on that committee?
So that is, also on that committee is Commissioner Donaldson, and then Co-Chair Adams is filling the vacancy, but I believe Commissioner Early, you originally had requested to be on there. It would be great if, I know you had some scheduling commitments, so if you could let Co-Chair Rodriguez know if you're available again.
Yeah.
They're trying to schedule something next week
So there for Monday.
to plug back in.
Okay. Next, we have the accountability committee, the corrective action matrix, and manual of rules. Do you have anything to report on those?
So, I know that Martin is in the process of going through these 2 policies and making notes and suggestions, and then I believe he was waiting on some additional feedback from the law department. And then at that point, I talked to Commissioner Chura, and I asked him, because at this point, the accountability committee is myself and Commissioner Chura, and Chura was part of the drafting process and revising process of these. So I did ask him if he would be okay, once we get the feedback from Martin, if he would be okay with this just coming to us for review at that point, instead of going to the accountability committee first, and he was fine with that. So I actually don't have copies of these.
So to the chair, through the chair, the corrective action and matrix, I was not in agreement with starting that from scratch because the previous iteration of this commission had already drafted a complete and total recommended discipline update. We had a wonderful community working group with labor law attorneys, union representatives, HR professionals, DEI people, and we spent months and months. It was some of our best work. And for some reason,
We didn't use that.
for some reason, that was considered to be work that was not needed to be reevaluated by the person that was running this committee. So my suggestion is that is long overdue. I think you should put it back in policy. There are no work group members that I'm aware of that are still out there, that had a large part in this. I know Lou, the community member Lou, who comes here and speaks often, had a little bit of involvement in it, and there was another individual who came from time to time, but there wasn't a real work group set around this. former Commissioner Jackson had stepped out of it due to some conflicts that occurred in that work group. So I would suggest that it come back to policy, that you reach out to former Commissioner Jackson, and that this group here just look at what was actually presented by the division, map it out against what the division, what we had already done, and just quickly turn that around. It's long overdue.
To the executive director, is this the report you're talking about in October of 2023? Recommendation?
So this one was in we actually did this one in 2019. So this was something that we sent to the division in 2019. It's on our website. It's the model disciplinary policy and matrix, corrective action guidance and matrix. So I know that the division did absorb some of those recommendations, but perhaps not all of those recommendations. So I think we can quickly resolve this one if you want to move this forward. We've had it since January, or even before that, I think. This was one of the first GPOs we received to review.
Great, so I mean, it sounds like maybe we can, between now and the next policy meeting, we could review that, but if possible, I would like to have a copy of the one that Martin is working on.
Yeah, that is the manual of rules. That's a completely different document. So we're talking about the corrective action and matrix, which is 1.07.06.
Okay,
The manual of rules is something that hasn't been rewritten since I think 2012. Ryan has the latest up-to-date edits on that, so he can brief you on that. He's sat in that work group the whole time. Yes, Martin is answering some legal questions.
So I thought there were two documents that
There are
came
three.
out of that came out of that work group.
There's one document, the manual of rules, which
Uh-huh.
is separate from the corrective action and matrix. So those are two documents. Their corrective action and matrix are two separate documents, and they are what the division uses to determine the level of discipline when you break the manual of rules. So the manual of rules is kind of a standalone thing that sets kind of the code of conduct for the division. The corrective action and matrix says if you violate the code of conduct, this is how we will classify those violations, and then what your possible, what the process is for addressing those violations, and then what the outcomes can be. So those all work in conjunction, but
I understand that, but what I don't understand, because I haven't, like, nothing has been sent to me from Commissioner Wong, is my understanding of it was that there were at least two new documents that were being reviewed. Is it just the only thing that came out of that work group was the manual of rules?
so she had two different work groups for that, I think. She had a different group for the manual rules and a different group for correction. I don't know.
So,
But
so
there
is a draft
From the
of
division, you have three documents to review total, and
Right.
you're looking at each one here on this agenda: corrective action, GPO, and then the matrix. That's two, and then manual of rules.
I hear you, and I am in agreement about going back to the work that was already done in 2019. I think that just because the accountability committee work group did put something together, I would like to just read it, and so I'm trying to figure out what I don't have that I would need to read.
You have all of those things. You just don't have the draft of the manual of rules that they worked on. So that is the one that they put notes in.
So I know I have the CDP version of these. So you're telling me that from that work group, there was only one new product that was
Yes, the
created,
manual
and that
of
was the
rules.
manual of rules.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
that was what I was confused
And that
about.
is the one where Martin is
That's-
assessing questions.
I thought there
on,
were two
yes.
documents.
Well, the other
Thank you.
documents are whatever they did with the corrective action and matrix. I don't know what the answer to that is or who was involved in it. So.
If you could just send me what you have, Ryan, that would be super, or send all of us, I mean, we have that, but I think that I completely agree with, Executive Director Goodrick of like, why reinvent the wheel when we already had a great group that put together a strong recommendation.
So just for clarity, at the beginning, somebody said that Martin was in the process of going through things, but that's the manual rules, not the corrective action matrix.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, the manual of rules had some legal questions associated with it around things like First Amendment and social media use
Right.
policy and things like that. So and when an officer is on and off duty, those things had to be delved into. The corrective action is a little more turnkey, so that one,
And Commissioner Chura has not, in fact, been that involved with the corrective action matrix. He was working on the manual rules, correct?
well, he wasn't working on either one of them really in coming into the work groups, I don't think, because he did say he felt he might have a conflict, and I'm just going off the top of my head about doing too much with these because he still has,
Wife is on the board.
his wife is on the force, right?
Hmm.
So, Ryan, I don't think he wasn't in every work group for the manual rules, right?
No, he was, the people who were typically in one of those, typically involved, though he was there, for some meetings, but during a lot of the people who were self-involved were, myself, Commissioner, Huang,
We're talking about the manual rules.
yes. And then also, Lou, community member, came in here. Also, we had a guy who is he was a former commander of the division of fire.
Oh,
Yes.
no.
So yeah, so he would, I forget the guy's last name, it's escaping me.
I'm just sending both of you an email with the two links to the. It looks like it was 2020 was when June 2020 was when the recommendations came out for the disciplinary matrix and the discipline policy. And so I'm sending you the link so that we all have that.
Great.
And Ryan and I can quickly figure out what with the corrective action and matrix, what needs to be done, and I'll just send you all an update on where we're at, you know, what our suggested next steps are for that. And I really think you should try and wrap that up in June if it's possible. We've had
At this
that
point, they've been
for a long time, and that is the reason that that's so important is because if you do that right and you make the system work better for how discipline happens internally, specifically around equality of discipline, right? If you take out some of that discretion, this is what our argument was, you will have less chance that on the back end you'll have to overturn discipline that was based off of somebody's feelings or discretion, right? So what officers and everybody in that committee came up with was let's try and make this more equal and lessen some of that discretionary use of disciplinary policy. So this work will save you work of the commission later, because once it goes into effect, this will have to get approved by the DOJ, of course, and go through the court. But if you were to be successful in revamping the discipline policy and matrix, what you'll have is less chance you will do hearings down the line, because that system should work much more efficiently, which helps the whole everything. So
one quick question. I'm looking online and it is saying that under the proposed changes to the CDP's disciplinary and policy matrix, it says to the disciplinary charge to save space here, please see the relevant attached documents. Is this the relevant attached document? Or am I missing something else?
now there's a model, yes. So there's
that's
a
the
model
chart.
policy that we attach to that. Yes.
Okay, so this is what they're referencing for that.
One of ours says in red, the CPC model disciplinary matrix. That's it.
So, and that is what is being referenced
In the report,
here.
if yes, so that if you scroll up, that's the report we did that outlines the changes, yes. So we just, there's a separate part to that. So I'll make sure you have everything.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I think that sounds good for us to.
So we have our next meeting, policy committee, a regular meeting on the 19th. So hopefully we can get that moving forward. Okay. New business. So these are just things we need to figure out how we're going to address them, but there are two in here that I'd like to raise up, which is the Warren Check GPO and the SWAT GPO. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at those, but Director Goodrich did review them, and I've looked at them. I think, basically, I don't know, Director, if you want to talk through these two
Yeah,
GPOs. We can
so the division isn't here, but what I think we did have this conversation, Pete, when you met with Captain Simon last as well. You covered some of the things. So let's start with the warrant check requirements. The GPO for warrant check requirements is just adding some level of accountability for officers doing warrant checks. So before it was very short, and now it's a much more detailed process on how you do that, what the responsibility is for it. I think I made one suggestion to Chair Van Leer that we just add a provision in there that says, and I don't have the email in front of me, Chair, might be able to bring it up, that talks about when you're running a check on a person with a warrant, that you have to make sure that they visually match to the person. So I've had this experience as a law enforcement officer when I was out on the street. Is there are people who are very close socials to people with warrants or other things that are tied to their vehicles, etc. And officers have continuously stopped them, detained them, and even in some instances arrested them, despite them saying, "Look, it's not me." Like, if you check the warrant, you'll see that person has a tattoo, and I don't have a tattoo, right? So it just, the only suggestion I made was something along the lines of, they should also look at the physical identifiers and be sure that they match up, like height, any tattoos, and hair, eyes, things like that, to just confirm. So that was the only thing that I recommended to Chair Van Leer with the SWAT GPO.
Can I ask a quick question about that? I apologize if this is just my own ignorance. Do all warrants always have a picture attached?
They'll use the driver's license photos typically. It may have changed over the years, but typically they'll have it'll come back without a photo, but you can use the driver's license photo. Sometimes they do have photos, so it just depends on the
So we could always just say if there is a photo.
Yeah, but
available.
sometimes there aren't photos available, and sometimes they don't have an ID in the system or a current ID in the system. So yes, but we have done that before. But because they can do more advanced running and looking for photos and things like that, and they can bring that to the scene as well. But that's beyond it just says the only recommendation was to get use as many identifiers as you can to verify.
That makes sense.
So yeah.
So right.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
so the SWAT GPO, that is as is. I didn't make any recommendations or suggestions based on my review. All they're doing with that, and let's be clear, SWAT is something that is controversial to people, right? Those are the tactical teams. Those are the paramilitarization of police. We understand that, but that's not what we're reviewing here right now. We can go down that road at another time if we want to look at, or we receive a reason to believe we need to look at that unit more closely. Certainly the CPC is able to do that. But what they're trying to do with this GPO is just align it with standardized practices for how a unit like this responds in a crisis and controls itself. So it's called the incident command system. So they added some things in there about how they report in a chain of command, who's in charge of this unit when it's deployed to a scene. It is standardized practice, in this day and age to do that. Cleveland Division of Police is working hard to get plugged into the way other systems work when you're using tactical teams like this. So there was nothing in there that was a red flag to me when I read it based on my professional experience. And I think we should just move that one forward to the full commission as quickly as possible.
Okay, so I want to go back to the warrant check thing, the warrant check GPO. So what you're saying is under member responsibilities, members who have an individual, so there's several listed here. There's A through F with some subcategories. The primary one is members with an individually, who have an individual lawfully seized shall verify the individual's identity through CCS or their mobile data computer, MDC, and they'll request a CCS check for any wants or warrants. And if anything comes back, they'll secure the individual, and then they'll transfer to the warrant channel to verify the warrant. So what you're saying is we would add perhaps an item there that says, they will confirm through photographs and description, height, that kind of thing. Like, what would the language that we'd want to add there?
So, let's see here. The only point of so from my email, it says, and this was, I don't know, at the beginning of the month I reviewed this, so it's not exactly fresh in my mind. The only point of feedback I have is that an officer ensure that if a warrant exists, they verify through physical description and other identifiers such as tattoos, if contested or by default. So if someone says this isn't me, an officer has a duty to just look to make sure that they match the physical description and not just go off of social hit, because they could be entered in incorrectly. The mobile data terminal should help considerably with that, because they can bring up physical descriptions and pictures, and they can use, some of this might be in OLEG and CGIS and all that stuff. So they have a lot more tools than they used to at their disposal. So it shouldn't hurt to just add that in there where you see fit, that they just have to, if contested or by default, they should just ensure that all physical descriptors are a match. It's just a simple sentence.
Do we think that should be added as after D?
I was actually thinking it would be part of A, like A1 maybe, because it says they'll verify the individual's identity through CCS, and then it also, as part of that process, I'm open to whatever, but I'm thinking, because that D is about the warrants, transferring the warrant, so I think it would be under, like, they're making sure that the right person comes back on the computer, it looks like the right person, but then they check the physical description, other identifiers. So physical.
I think it would be after B then, though, because after A, they don't know at that point whether there is a warrant. They're just checking the identity then, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
But that's at the point that the identification should be made
Right.
clear.
Yeah.
At the very start of the process.
So they don't have to go check on a warrant, then go back and say, oh, well, let's check your physical description, I think.
Well, but what I'm thinking is A is when they get your license and they go back to your car and they run your info. And then B is when they take that info that they ran and run it through the warrant system.
But
right?
why would they
So
check the
when they-
warrant with the wrong person if the wrong person has been seized?
So when they put that information in, dispatch will, or if it may come back on their MDT if they're manually doing it, but if they're asking dispatch to run, they'll just come back as a hit. So at that point is when they should make sure the hit matches the person, right? So if they get a hit on a warrant,
So before the warrant or after the warrant? Like,
no, you'd have to do it
After.
you'd run the person, right? First you run the person
Right.
that you have, right? So they tell you, this is me. They either give you an ID or they give you their information manually because they don't have an ID. Then it'll be run.
Right.
After you get a hit, that's when you would get back a physical description of that warrant person in the hit. You would match it then, right?
So
They would also have to do a second step. They have to manually confirm warrants. So you have to actually call and make sure that the warrant still is existing, right? So it's a 2-point process.
Right.
While after they get the hit, they just need to check and read.
So
the
when you're
physical
saying the hit, I'm
description.
sorry, when you're saying the hit, what do you mean? You mean,
It's either going to come back a misdemeanor or a felony warrant from
so they have to,
somewhere.
you're saying they need to check the warrant, and then what Commissioner
They're not-
Bina,
Right.
what Commissioner Bina was saying is what you're saying is correct.
Right, they also need to check the the officer needs to make sure the physical description
Right.
matches when they get that hit.
So when they get the warrant hit,
Yes.
not before they check for warrants, after they
No,
check
you
for warrants.
wouldn't know if they
Right,
have a
okay,
warrant
that's
first.
my question, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm trying to clarify. Yes.
No,
Okay, so
yeah.
we would put it like as B1 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another question then, just understanding how this works. So are we talking about warrant checks in just terms of traffic stops?
Wherever they have a field encounter. So once they have enough information to So when they do those, what I want to get the right term, right? So it would be a field investigation, right? And then it's actually a detention, right? Because at some point they're saying you can't leave, it's no longer a consensual encounter, right? That's most likely when they will then ask you for your identity, right? And at that point, if you're detained, they will check your identity against the system, right, to see who they have. And so that's when a warrant would come. It wouldn't come through a consensual encounter, but yes, to your point on a traffic stop, you are detained at a traffic stop, right? So that's when you get the information, they always run whoever they have for those warrant checks on detentions with traffic stops.
Same policy then would be for warrants on an individual at a property, then, correct? The same policy would lead that.
Correct. If they have a lawful detention of you, that's typically when they'll run a warrant check, right? Not during a consensual encounter, but if they have you detained with where they believe is reasonable suspicion, which means they're telling you you can't leave, and they're asking you for your ID, that's when they will run you in the system for warrants typically. So, yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, because I want to make sure I'm clear, Jason. So I get that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not being facetious in the questioning, but Judge, whoever issues a warrant for Kyle Early, and they come to my house with the warrant, and I'm going to be detained in that process. Does this GPO still? Does the officer follow this GPO under those circumstances?
So that's a warrant service. I think that has a different
Okay.
GPO for that.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
think because
Just
they
want clarity.
they typically don't typically serve warrants like that. They don't have the manpower to do it, so that's for only the higher tier crimes, right? So most people have bench warrants and things like that are discovered through random encounters or traffic stops.
And I was asking
Yeah.
because of the outside agency warrants part. So oftentimes the FBI or the sheriff's department will have warrants. They go out and do their raids or pickups early in the morning. Just trying to figure
Right. Those are for
So
the
those
high
are-
profile, like
so-
Violent Fugitive Task
Yeah.
Force. They're not doing that for the the low level stuff. So
Okay.
yeah. And that follows a different GPO, I believe. They have a warrant service GPO when they do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I feel like we have agreement generally that we want to add, and I can work with director on language before we bring this to the full commission, but that we're good to, with that, after the warrant comes back, if there's a warrant that is that with this individual who's been seized, then that's when we want them to require them to check physical description of their files, and we can fine tune that language, right? So we have to do that right now. We have the general sense of it, and we can. Or do you want to fine tune it right now?
It's up to you all. I mean, you should probably move this through. This is
Yeah, that's what we want to do. I'm just saying, do we want to fine tune it, or can we just agree on it and then
we can agree.
and we'll work out the language off. You and I will fine tune the language because there's a sense that we know what we want.
So I guess one thing that I'm wondering is, I guess I don't know, do you think it's most likely that there's a photo or there's like a physical description of like tattoos or like just a general physical?
Should be both in this day and age. Most likely they have a photo and a descriptor. But even photos could be 10 years old. You don't look like that person that, or isn't it easily identifiable. There's other things, especially if you have an arrest history, that they put under there for identifiers about you, right? So one of the biggest things is I remember someone saying, you could tell it's not me because I'm 5'6" and that guy's 6'2", right? So that should be something officers routinely catch, but they get so caught on that social that it's a social hit that it has to be them that they sometimes get tunnel vision and they don't look at that.
So I think
So every physical descriptor matters. Your hair color, your eye color, your height, it should all be taken in totality.
Yeah. I guess I might be being like overly curious about this, but like I'm trying to think of a situation where if we're asking officers to then verify the identity, could that potentially lead to any like, let's say that, and again, I don't know what the descriptions on the warrants look like, so I am kind of shooting blind, but like, let's say that a warrant says that, the person has a tattoo on their side, then is the officer then going and saying, lift up your shirt so that we can see your tattoo, right? Like, is that then, like, I guess, what does it mean to verify somebody's, I mean, I agree, like, I want us to have the thing, I'm just like, do we need to specify what that looks like? I mean, is it just covered under, like, in a reasonable way or something like that?
Yeah, through the chair, I think you would be overthinking it in this GPO. Like, so long as you say that they should use, all the physical descriptors or as many physical descriptors as possible to ensure when it's contested. Someone says, that's me, you won't have this problem. We're talking about the people who say, you have the wrong person, right? Instead of that being ignored,
Right,
which happens to people sometimes,
right.
an officer has the duty under this GPO to then verify that that is in fact the person who they are going to arrest on that warrant. So,
One way around that,
and they have sorry, go ahead.
no, one way around that would just say visible, but if you're saying that's not necessary.
Well, they have other GPOs that guide that. So they're, they have to follow all their GPOs all the time. So you would be talking about an intrusive strip search at that point, which is not, but people would be willing, if they believe
Yeah,
that,
I would.
they would be willing to show you,
my tattoo,
they're,
or not.
if it's proof positive that they are not that person, it won't really be that invasive, because people will be like, look at my behind, you'll see it's not me. They don't want to go to jail.
Right, yeah.
So,
That makes sense. I just wanted to stop there.
Okay. So on this one, if we're good, I would make a motion that we pass this with, the fine tuning to come on that additional language.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? We'll just do a voice. Oh, we can do it. All right. Sean Benito,
Aye.
Kyle Gurley,
Aye.
Pete Van Leer, aye. Motion passes. So then the next one is the SWAT, and we had talked about really not making any changes. Do any of you have questions on SWAT or concerns?
On SWAT, no.
Okay. So I would then make a motion that we pass the SWAT to GPO as it's before us.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Okay, call for a vote. Shanda Benito,
Aye.
Kyle Early,
Aye.
Pete Van Leer, aye. Motion passes, and so we will send this as is to the full commission at our next meeting. Okay, the rest of these are just, we have to sort of make a plan for how we handle them. The one thing I will note is with social media policy and usage, Director Goodrick, I just reached back out to Andy Geronimo. I called him. He said to call him if we wanted to move forward. So I did that, and that was just today. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll have an update on that at our next committee meeting on the 19th.
I just wanted to double check that the one, I can't find the transport, social media, and recruitment retention ones.
We can get those out. I don't know if they've been sent out or not. It's just we need to start to make a plan for how to deal with them.
Great,
So
yeah.
we don't have to review them right now.
Okay, yeah, because the one that I'm seeing that we have, that I have in my email that we haven't discussed is youth support, but yeah, I'm happy to make a plan for those.
Director Goodrick, do you have any? And SWAT was one of the ones from the division that they had prioritized. The other is Fuse Command. That's different.
I'll take a look here at use of force reporting, arrestee, restraint, transport, and supervision, and get you any feedback on that as quickly as possible. the recruitment and retention.
The use of force reporting one is really simple. It's just changing, it looks like that all closed fist strikes to the head will not automatically be considered a level 3 use of force. It's a pretty short GPO.
Yeah, if that's the only change, I would,
I have some concerns about that because a closed fist to the head is, can be potentially lethal.
and you may want to reach out to the division to find out what
Why?
their, so,
Yeah.
this is, because this was a special, but normally we would invite them here, and maybe you can get through that in a dialogue if you just put that back on the agenda for June. And they could quickly answer any questions about why that change is being in there.
Yeah, because if you look at a lot of the, this only came up because this came up during looking through the outside affiliates before this new commission was seated. One of the things that that's best practices for use of force was no fist striking the head is always considered the most serious course of action, which is actually one of the reasons that Tri-C's use of force policy was out of compliance back then, because they had, and that's been Cleveland policy.
So yeah, we have a GPO meeting with the division in June before our next policy committee meeting, I believe.
Great.
So we can, if you have questions about any of these that we're looking at, feel free to send them to me, look at these. Jason, you can look at them, and we'll have that conversation with them, and we can ask them questions.
Sounds good. So I guess what the question is, are there any of these that we feel like need a work group or like a larger process?
I feel like, social media and policy, hopefully we can get that done quickly through people who have the expertise and can, but other than that, I don't know, I'm agnostic.
The only thing I see on here, I don't see a recruitment and retention GPO on our tracker, so that may be a misprint, but
Okay.
I don't see a GPO that says recruitment and retention, so I'm not sure where that came from, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know I'm not sure where that came from then. Yeah, we'll look into it.
But the other ones on here, you should be able to, the arrestee, restraint, transport, and supervision, and the use of force reporting, those should be able to maybe be on your agenda for June and move those off the list as well.
So you said, use of force,
Use of force reporting and arrestee, restraint, transport, supervision. That one I'll take a look at here
What? Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
before the meeting with the division.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I'm looking at, duties of command and superior officers, that you've recommended that I go to hiring and evaluations committee. Is that, is that happening? Has that been?
Duties of command and superior officers. Yeah, that falls in there
So
in that scope. So I think that's the right place for it. It shouldn't be that hard for them to. I know that again they're overwhelmed with trying to plan these things, but if Commissioner Early is now free and able to come back on, I think they can move some of this stuff forward a lot faster.
Okay, I'll put that in the tracker for that committee. And just as an update also, we're still working through the pursuits thing is happening, right? So that's going on. Through pursuits and pursuit investigation team, the wearable camera and in-car camera systems, that's with the surveillance tech. So I'm just filling out this form a little bit.
Our next meeting will be the Thursday after the event on the 27th, and it will be held on
Pursuits.
Teams.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, I don't see anything else on our list. So I think we're good with that, unless there are other questions or things that have come up with you all. Okay. We've got our marching orders, we got our work to do. Jason, anything else we need to be thinking about here?
I'm going back through the, and just forwarding DNs that have come in the last 2 weeks, and I'll make sure that there's been no policy sent since that time, but I think.
I haven't seen anything, but yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness, it's been busy.
But I think you're catching up and knocking those off the list here, and pretty soon you'll have, and at least you'll be able to give the division timelines if you check back with Chair Rodriguez on the police evaluations, and then it looks like we can add the fact that you may be able to move the corrective action and matrix forward in June along with SWAT and the warrant check requirements, which would all be great to get off the list.
All righty. So there is no public comment at this moment. So we are good to adjourn early if everybody's ready for that. I make a motion that we adjourn. I don't know if we need to do that.
Do we have to,
It's early, so.
I don't know.
we
But
made it
yeah,
to the agenda, yeah.
Yes, we finished the
Unanimous
agenda,
consent?
so we're good. So we are now adjourned.
great job, Pete.
All right, hold on.
Thank you all for being here.